going to talk to you a little bit about Trilogy Metals. We're listed on the Toronto and New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol TMQ. For more information on the company, I encourage you to go to our website, trilogymetals.com, where you'll find our press releases, the management team, the board team, plus copies of presentations. And as you mentioned, we're going to talk about polymetallic deposits, and our deposits are located in the great state of Alaska. And we're talking about high-grade deposits in a safe jurisdiction, along the lines of what you mentioned in terms of where the bulk of exploration is occurring, either the U.S., Canada, or Australia. And then I'm going to talk about some of the partnerships that we have in terms of moving the advanced project that we have, Arctic, and the advanced exploration project, Bornite, forward. So let me tell you a little bit about just the Ambler mining district. As you can see from this slide, we're talking about a very large mineralized area, significant copper indicated and inferred resources, but also very large zinc, gold, and silver resources. And in addition, at Bornite, we have about 77 million pounds of cobalt in both the indicated and inferred category. We are talking about high grade. When we talk about Arctic, for example, it's about 43 million tons at 4.2% copper equivalent. So that stacks up very well against any undeveloped projects in the world. And I think, Joe, as you have mentioned, in terms of capital intensity, and we'll get to that when we look at one of these slides, the capital intensity associated with the project is fairly low, and it's a robust economic project. As I mentioned, we're located in Alaska, which has obviously a large number of existing operating mines. It's a great rule of law jurisdiction. There's a lot of skills in the state, and we've got the ability of being able to access transportation networks and get ultimately the concentrate to various markets. We have a joint venture partner. I'll be talking a little bit more about the partnerships. That partner is South 32, and they've invested about $200 million in Trilogy and the Ambler mining district since they initially approached us in 2017 to conduct an exploration JV. But subsequent to that, in 2020, we formed the JV where we contributed the Ambler mining district assets into a new JV company called Ambler Metals, and South 32 contributed $145 million into the JV. And then I'll talk a little bit more about Bornite in terms of an advanced exploration project. In terms of our shareholder base, Trilogy was spun out of Nova Gold in 2012. So we have a large number of shareholders that are original Nova Gold shareholders, including Electrum, Baupost, and Paulson. In addition, we have Bernard Seltz, who owns 8% directly. South 32, in addition to the 50% interest in the JV, also owns 11.4% of the stock. And you can see who the other holders are. So a small number of holders will control roughly 64% of the company. The company has about $7 million in cash as of our last reporting. There's no debt. In addition, at the JV, there's $125 million in cash in the JV. So our pro rata share of that cash is roughly $62 million. So when you look at the enterprise value of a company, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $160, $170 million based on what's happened with the trading on any given day. So we feel like we're in a very strong position in terms of the financial position of the JV. We have enough cash at the JV to fund activities for the next 3 years, roughly, taking us to when we hope to make an investment decision, roughly 2024. And we recently released our budget for the 2022 year, and we're looking to spend about $28 million at the Ambler Mining District this year, which would include, obviously, a significant drill campaign, but also a lot of activities in terms of moving the project forward from a technical perspective. And I'll speak about our feasibility study and some of the other work that's being done. And then we expect to start the permitting process on the mine, and we expect to start that sometime in March of this year. So there'll be costs associated with moving the permitting forward the project. I mentioned 3 partnerships. The partnership with South 32 in terms of a JV, which we've talked about. We also have a partnership with NANA, which is a native corporation, which represents effectively 14,000 shareholders or residents of a Northwest Arctic borough. So having NANA as a partner is very important to us. They have an economic stake in the Ambler mining district, but they're also our partner in terms of employment opportunities for people within the regions and economic benefits through royalties and ultimately through amounts and taxes that would be paid into the local bureau. So having NANA there is definitely a big plus for us. And then lastly, we have an infrastructure partnership with the state of Alaska, and that's very much similar to how the Red Dog mine was built in the state of Alaska, where Teck and NANA partnered with the state of Alaska to build a road and port infrastructure to allow that project to go forward. So I'll speak a little bit more about where we're at from a road perspective. The area that we have, similar to what Radius Gold was talking about in terms of large land position, is vast, 181,000 hectares. It's been explored since the 60s, but there was a hiatus there for roughly 15, 20 years where not a lot of exploration has happened. It's only been in the last 5 years that we've seen fairly significant increases in exploration. I mentioned NANA. NANA is a very important player in the state of Alaska. They are Teck's partners in the Red Dog mine. And as I mentioned, we're very much modeling ourselves on how Red Dog was built, with having NANA as a partner and having the state of Alaska through AIDEA to help advance a project and move it forward. So we have an agreement with NANA, so they will be able to either participate through a net profit interest in any mines in the Ambler mining district, or through a direct interest in the mines if they choose to pay their share of capital, including sunk costs. So having them in partnership with us really does differentiate us from many other companies operating in Alaska and the US as well. In terms of infrastructure, the focus is really on having the proposed Ambler access road built. This was actually permitted in 2020. That process took roughly 5 years, and AIDEA was the proponent, working with the Bureau of Land Management. So that permit went through. It's proposed to be a 211-mile road. Last year, we started the process of advancing the road and getting right-of-ways to be able to move the road forward. And this year, activities are going to continue as well in terms of advancing the road. And we hope to commence construction of a road at the same time that we make an investment decision on the mine, which would be roughly 2024. And we haven't released the budget for the road this year, but that will be coming out shortly. And the idea is to continue to advance the detailed engineering of a road to put ourselves in a position to really be able to hit the ground running once we make the investment decision. The road would be a hard packed gravel road. It would start out as a single lane road and eventually be a double lane road in due course. It would be private access only, so it wouldn't be used for public purposes. And although AIDEA and the state would fund the development of the road, the companies that would use the road would ultimately pay tolls to pay for the road over the life of a project that would be developed in the Ambler mining district. It would connect to the Dalton Highway, which is existing infrastructure, and to Fairbanks, where there's a railhead, and from Fairbanks to Anchorage, you transport by rail, and there's an existing port that's already built and operational in Anchorage. This is where the proposed road would go, and you can see the various deposits and targets that we have in the district. The advanced one is Arctic, Bornite is very large, Smucker is owned by Teck, and Sun is privately owned. So we're in a very good position relative to where the road would be and the deposits and targets that we have in the district. These are the economics from a feasibility study that we released in 2020. And we're talking about an initial 12-year mine life. We obviously hope it will be considerably longer than that. But you can see that the economics are extremely robust on a base case scenario where you have a $1.1 billion NPV and after-tax IRR of 27%, capital intensity of $7,300. And then, just for fun, we looked at it at the spot price, and you can see that the NPV increases to $2.7 billion. After-tax IRR is 46%. Paybacks for 1.3 years. So this is an extremely robust project, and this is before we factor in any exploration success, which we expect to have in the district. This is akin to what Joe was talking about earlier, and what it is a profitability index, and it basically shows the after-tax IRR and after-tax MPV when you factor initial capital and sustaining capital, and you divide it by MPV. So the higher up you are, the better. The further right you are, the better. So you can see where we are relative to other projects that are out there. So we're in a very privileged and strong position, and that underscores that $7,300 a ton that I mentioned earlier in terms of the feasibility study. In terms of mine permitting, we expect to start that in March of this year. We see the process taking between 24 and 30 months. There's no federal lands, so the permitting process, there is a 404 wetlands permit that we would need to get from the federal government. Most of the permits would be state and borough approvals. And we undertook a permitting preparedness review the latter part of last year, and we looked at tailings and water management issues. So we feel we're in a really good position to hit the ground running and advance the project from a permitting perspective. In terms of exploration potential in the district, what's very interesting about Arctic is that it's a VMS deposit. So if you compare it to some other VMS deposits in the world, whether it's Flin Flon or Hokuruku, you can see how these deposits have had very extended mine lives for multi-decades, and we expect the same with the Ambler and the bornite area. And these deposits typically occur in clusters. So yes, we've got Arctic at 43.3 million tons at 4.2%, but we also think there's other opportunities within the district. And a big part of the focus on exploration is to extend the mine life from the current proposed 12-year mine life to something significantly longer than that. In terms of upcoming catalysts for the project, we're continuing to do work on our feasibility study. And so we're doing the technical work in terms of updating the feasibility study, looking at the pit design, the TSF design, and infrastructure design for the area, and really putting more meat on the bone as far as looking at the Trilogy feasibility study that had been prepared. We'll continue to get assay results from our drill program from last year. We've only released 4 results so far, and it's really along the lines of what Radius was talking about earlier, where there's really a backlog with the labs and ability to get assays as quickly as you'd like. One of the holes that we released was infill hole. It was 20 meters at 12% copper. And, we think that there's a lot more opportunities, certainly on the infill side, to have some very exciting holes. And then we'll be looking at some of the satellite deposits associated outside of the Arctic area that we hope will obviously lead to extending mine life. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we expect the permitting of the project to start in March. We'll also be releasing an updated study on our resource for bornite. I haven't really talked about bornite, but bornite's a satellite deposit that contains 77 million pounds of cobalt. It has roughly 60 million tons of 3% copper in an underground deposit, as well as roughly 120 million tons at 1% in an open pit. So what we want to do with the resource is really come out and give a bit more color as to how that resource holds up with a somewhat higher cost environment, but more importantly, how we can look at this deposit and how it could ultimately be integrated into the development of the district overall. And bornite is roughly about 20 to 25 kilometers from the proposed Arctic mill. So with that, I will pass it back to you, Joe. We'll save a little bit of time on my end, and I look forward to answering any questions that anyone may have. Thank you very much.